So I thought it was time for another Thought of the Day video. And I had a friend forward me this article a few months ago, and I've been saving it because I thought it was just so good that I wanted to share it. My original intention was to read this article, and I think because of copyright laws, I probably am not supposed to, and I shouldn't. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a link to this article in the description to the video so that you can read it for yourself. And I want to invite you to go and read the article because it will be so much better when you engage the fullness of the material. But it's an article, it's a satirical play on the story of the Good Samaritan. And it's entitled The Effective Samaritan, a Parable, by Phil Christman. Okay? The Effective Samaritan, a Parable by Phil Christman. And this is written with a certain sense of what I would call prophetic humor. So I used the word satire a moment ago. This is meant to have a certain kind of biting, cutting edge to it, prophetic humor. It's not designed to be humor for the purpose of entertaining you, nor is it this literal theological treatise. It's a satirical, there's a prophetic humor to it. It's trying to poke fun at the farce that we live in. It's trying to provocatively get us to think critically about the world that we often call normal and get us to realize that normal shouldn't be normal. And so he retells the story of the Good Samaritan in order to get it to speak to our context and our world, right? So it starts like this. The article says, "But he, willing to justify himself, said unto Jesus, And who is my neighbor? And Jesus answering him said, A certain man went down from Athens to Atlanta, and fell among thieves, which stripped him of his raiment, and wounded him, and departed, leaving him half dead." And then Christman, as he tells this story, this satirical play on the Good Samaritan, he has all these characters come in, similar to how Jesus did. He inserts characters that would speak to our world. The first one is a conservative megachurch head pastor. And it goes, there's all these kind of funny jabs at what that worldview might wrestle with and what there might be to look at and think about. And the pastor ends up saying, "This is what comes of woke politicians. Slimy, dirty people everywhere. A decent person can't even ride the bus. The Uber drivers always want a tip," and so on and so forth. And you can kind of sense the tone that's going on here. But then the next character to come along is what we might call a mainliner. So one of those, like, think of the mainline denominations of Christianity that kind of represent, whether it's Lutherans or Methodists or those mainline Protestant, and that person comes along and they have a particular response to that. The third person to come along is an evangelical influencer, social media influencer, who's going through the process of deconstruction. This person says, "Poor guy, and his bowels were moved. He was moved to compassion, and he thought, I should help this man. It is a sin to not help him." But then he thought, "Is not sin a toxic concept? Have I not talked about should statements with my therapist? Did she not give me a script?" And you realize the tone and the critique of each particular worldview. We've kind of all figured it out, right? And then the next person to come along is a trad-cath, a traditional Catholic, right? And they have a particular response. And then along came a liberation theologian, and they have a particular response because of who they are. And then finally there comes along two Duke Divinity School post-liberals, grad students, and they have this long discussion about theology and all these things. And then Christman says, all of them had their reward. But then a certain disenchanted liberal technocrat, as he journeyed, came where he was, and he saw him, and he had compassion on him. And he went to him and bound up his wounds, pouring in oil and wine, and set him on his own beast, and brought him to an inn, and took care of him, and did exchange with him reddit handles. And on the morrow, when he departed, he took out 2 pence, and gave them to the host, and said unto him, Take care of him, and whatsoever thou spendest more, when I come again, I will repay thee. And the host did say, The doctors say he needs a new kidney. And the man was sore afraid. But he was an effective altruist. And so he said, Lo, I have an extra one that I'm not using. And hoarding it would be irrational under the circumstances. And he gave the man his kidney. And being recovered, he went back to his job as a consultant. And great was his reward in the kingdom of God, if he would allow himself to know it. Which now of these, thinkest thou, was neighbor unto him that fell among thieves? And I loved, you should read the whole article. It's just so much better when you get to read all the little chunks and the biting humor and all of that stuff. But this landed for me on a few levels. First of all, I think there's an obvious implication to the parable that the only thing that really matters is not belonging to the right worldview or having the right paradigm. The only thing that matters to the person who's hurt and wounded is actually helping the person who's hurt and wounded. I actually said something similar. It was a couple years ago on one of my Thought of the Day videos. I'll even link that video in the description to this video. Like, the only thing that really matters is not how right you are or whether or not you're in the right camp or wearing the right jersey or the only thing that matters to the people that need it the most is whether or not you're actually going to do something. So the only person that did something and then was willing to do even more and give of his kidney, and like, that's the only thing that really actually ended up mattering. And then there's a level where the entire parable invites us to associate with particular worldviews and consider how those worldviews fall short and how they can fail us and others at times. And then there's like a whole nother level where, like, even this disenchanted liberal technocrat, right, who actually helps the wounded, there's even that line, and great was his reward in the kingdom of God if he would allow himself to know it. Like, there's still this, but does even he? Like, I feel like there's a level to this parable that's also asking us to critique whether or not we're so disconnected from God with any of our worldviews, any of our paradigms, that we would even see and understand the kingdom of God if we entered it, brushed up against it, encountered it. Would we even know, because of our circumstances, our idolatry, our theology, whatever, that would we even know? And then if I'm reading this correctly, I think there's even another level, and I could be wrong. Maybe I'm reading too much into this, but I feel like maybe Christman's even greater point is whether is effectiveness actually what is the relationship between effectiveness and truth, effectiveness and the kingdom of God? Do we glory? Like, this parable to me just kind of like keeps talking, and it's super funny, and I very much appreciate it. And like, oh yes, and I'm challenged by that one, and that paragraph's about me, and I'm kind of offended, but in the way that I should be. Like, I should be offended, and because I need to, that's right, and I need to be different, and I need to change. Like, there's all those levels of the parable, and then there's like all these other things to keep thinking about. So it was a great thought of the day. It was great fodder for a thought of the day discussion. I wanted to share it with you. I invite you to read it, to think about it, maybe even share it with others and talk about it with other people. But man, what a fun little exercise to think about. What are the things that matter? What are the ways that our worldview falls short? Why does what matter? Like, the thing that matters, why does that matter? Is it the thing that's supposed to matter? That sounded far more convoluted than it needed to, but I think you might understand what I'm trying to get at. And just so many things. There's probably so many different things that you might take away from that as a thought of the day today. And maybe next week or next month you'd take something totally different. So anyway, I thought I would share it with you. I hope it's a fun exercise to wrestle with. And yeah, if you find anything in there worth value, That's why we do this. We'll see you in the next video whenever we have a thought of the day. We'll talk to you then.